Monday. I left the office with a cardboard box holding a few notebooks, a family photo, and a deactivated employee badge. By Friday, I sat in a dive bar down the street, watching the TV as FBI agents escorted out the very people who'd erased me from corporate existence. Between the cold beers and the cheers from locals, I knew justice had its own way of working. But truth be told, to reach that moment, I'd been the one pushing the wheel in its direction. My name is Emily Carter, and at 34, I thought I'd built something solid at Westvale Dynamics. 5 years of 12-hour days, missed birthdays, and cold dinners had carved my place in the communications department of this Denver telecommunications giant. That Monday morning started like any other. Black coffee steaming in my favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle, fluorescent lights humming their familiar tune overhead. I was reviewing the quarterly media strategy when Melissa from HR appeared at my cubicle. Her heels clicked against the floor with unusual urgency, and she wore that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Emily, could you come with me? Just a quick chat." The walk to HR felt longer than usual. Colleagues glanced up from their screens, then quickly away, as if eye contact might infect them with whatever misfortune awaited me. The conference room smelled of lemon air freshener, trying to mask something stale. Jonathan Miles, Vice President of Communications, sat at the far end of the table, studying his phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Emily, please sit." Melissa gestured to a chair that felt suddenly uncomfortable. A manila folder lay closed between us, my name typed neatly on the tab. "I'm afraid we need to discuss some organizational changes." The words that followed blurred together. Departmental restructuring, strategic realignment, position elimination. Corporate euphemisms for a simple truth. I was being fired. Jonathan finally looked up, his expression carefully neutral. This was the same man who'd promised me a promotion just 3 weeks ago, who'd praised my crisis management during the data breach last quarter. "Effective immediately?" I heard myself ask, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "We think it's best for all parties," Melissa replied, sliding a separation agreement across the table. "You'll receive 2 weeks severance, contingent on signing this NDA. Security will escort you to collect your belongings." The humiliation of packing my desk while Brad from security watched was exquisite in its cruelty. 5 years condensed into a single cardboard box. My colleagues became suddenly fascinated with their keyboards, phone calls mysteriously urgent. Only Sarah from accounting risked a sympathetic glance, mouthing, "I'm sorry," before turning away. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into purgatory. Brad stood beside me, keys jangling, as if I might steal staplers on my way out. In the lobby, he held out his hand for my badge, the plastic card that had opened doors, validated my parking, bought my lunches, rendered meaningless with a single deactivation. Outside, Denver's November air bit through my blazer. I stood on the sidewalk, box in arms, watching through the glass as life inside Westvale continued without me. Jonathan appeared briefly in the lobby, speaking animatedly with someone from the board. He glanced out, our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and he turned away. The Uber driver tried to make conversation, but I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. My phone buzzed with messages. Word traveled fast in corporate circles, each text a variation of shock and empty promises to grab coffee soon. But beneath the rage and humiliation, something else stirred. During my final hours at Westvale, I'd handled sensitive documents, contracts with peculiar amendments, emails with carefully coded language. Details I'd dismissed then now seemed to glow with new significance. By the time I reached my apartment, the shock had crystallized into something harder, sharper. They thought they'd disposed of me cleanly. Another casualty of corporate efficiency. But Jonathan Miles had made a mistake. In his haste to eliminate me, he'd forgotten that the communications department didn't just manage press releases. We managed secrets. And some of those secrets were still sitting in my personal cloud storage, uploaded during late nights when the company VPN was too slow. I set the box on my kitchen counter and poured myself a scotch, the good stuff I'd been saving for my promotion celebration. The irony tasted better than the whiskey. Monday had broken me, but it had also freed me. And freedom, I was beginning to realize, could be a dangerous thing in the hands of someone with nothing left to lose. The apartment felt smaller with me in it all day. Tuesday morning arrived without an alarm, and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my body still programmed for a 6 a.m. wake-up that no longer mattered. The scotch bottle on my nightstand stood half empty, a monument to Monday night's spiral between rage and self-pity. My phone continued its symphony of sympathy. Former colleagues texted carefully worded messages, dancing around their relief that the axe hadn't fallen on them. "Thinking of you," wrote Janet from marketing. "You'll bounce back stronger," offered Tom from IT. Empty calories of comfort from people who'd already started forgetting my extension number. I scrolled through news feeds in my bathrobe, coffee growing cold in my hands. Westvale Dynamics appeared in a brief Bloomberg mention, something about exceeding quarterly projections. The article quoted Jonathan extensively, his corporate speak polished to a mirror shine. My replacement hadn't even been announced yet, and already my contributions had been erased from the narrative. Wednesday brought a call from Marcus, my only real friend from the office. "Emily, Jesus, I just heard. I've been in Phoenix for the conference." His voice carried genuine concern. "What the hell happened?" "Restructuring," I said, the word tasting like ash. Jonathan's version of streamlining. "That's bullshit. You ran that department." A pause. "Listen, there've been rumors. Weird stuff happening in the C-suite. Closed-door meetings with people nobody recognizes. Maybe you getting cut wasn't random." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began sifting through the digital detritus of my career. Folders within folders, organized with the obsessive precision that had once made me valuable. Most of it was mundane: press releases, media contact lists, strategy documents. But buried in a folder labeled Q3 MISC, I found them again. The documents that had passed through my hands in September, requiring my signature for processing but never my scrutiny. Invoice adjustments to shell companies with names like Meridian Consulting Group and Alpine Strategic Solutions. Payment authorizations with Jonathan's signature, but amounts that didn't match the services described. A contract amendment for advisory services totaling $3 million. Paid to a company that, according to a quick Google search, didn't exist beyond a P.O. box in Delaware. Thursday, I couldn't stop digging. Each document led to another question, another thread to pull. The apartment became a war room of printed pages, highlighted passages, and sticky notes mapping connections. The shredded remains of my corporate life were revealing themselves to be something else entirely. Evidence of a financial web that reached beyond Westvale's glass towers. A pattern emerged. Every suspicious transaction had occurred just before earnings calls, just before major announcements. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence, and always, Jonathan's digital fingerprints were there, buried in metadata, in forwarded email chains where he'd forgotten to delete the thread history. That evening, I stood at my window, watching Denver's lights flicker to life, my reflection ghost-like in the glass. The woman staring back wasn't the eager professional who'd walked into Westvale 5 years ago. That version of me had believed in climbing ladders, in earning recognition through dedication. This new version understood that the ladder had been an illusion, and those at the top had been pulling it up behind them all along. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Carter?" A woman's voice, professional, but cautious. "My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm an independent journalist focusing on corporate malfeasance. I've been investigating Westvale Dynamics for 6 months. I heard about your departure. I think we should talk. How did you get this number?" "Marcus Webb gave it to me. He thought you might have information relevant to my investigation." I looked at the papers covering my coffee table, at the conspiracy wall I'd built from my professional ruins. "What makes you think I'd want to help?" "Because Jonathan Miles didn't just fire you, Ms. Carter. He made you disappear. And in my experience, When someone works that hard to erase someone else, it's usually because that person knows something dangerous. The rage that had been simmering since Monday crystallized into something colder, more precise. They'd taken my career, my stability, my sense of purpose, but they'd made one crucial error. They'd left me with my knowledge and nothing to lose by using it. "There's a bar called Murphy's on Colfax," I said. "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I'll be there." I hung up and turned back to my makeshift evidence board. The woman in the window's reflection smiled, and for the first time since Monday, it reached her eyes. Revenge, I was learning, wasn't a dish best served cold. It was best served with documentation. The September files haunted me through Thursday night. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, laptop warm against my thighs, following digital breadcrumbs through folders I'd archived months ago without truly seeing them. Back then, I'd been too busy managing the daily crisis cycle to notice the patterns. Now, with nothing but time and bitterness to fuel me, the picture emerged with startling clarity. It had started with a simple request from Jonathan. "Emily, I need you to process these consultant invoices. Board's asking for everything to be logged through proper channels." His smile had been apologetic, harried. "I know it's beneath your pay grade, but I trust your discretion." Trust. The word felt like a joke now. The first invoice had seemed legitimate enough. $750,000 to Meridian Consulting Group for strategic advisory services. But I remembered the board meeting that followed. No consultants had presented, no strategic shifts were announced. The money had simply vanished into the ether, approved by Jonathan, processed by me, and forgotten by everyone else. Then came more. Alpine Strategic Solutions, $1.2 million for market analysis. Pinnacle Advisory, LLC, $2.3 million for regulatory compliance consulting. Each company had a professional website that said nothing, addresses that led to empty office suites or P.O. boxes, and registration documents that dead-ended in offshore havens. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up state registration databases, SEC filings, campaign finance records. A name kept appearing in the margins: Senator David Hutchinson, chairman of the Telecommunications Oversight Committee. The same senator who'd pushed through favorable legislation for Westvale just weeks after these payments were made. I grabbed my phone and photographed everything, uploading files to 3 different cloud services. If they could make me disappear, I could make copies that wouldn't. An email thread from October made me stop breathing. Jonathan had forwarded it to me by accident, meant for someone named Thompson in legal. The thread went back months, discussing arrangements and mutual benefits with someone identified only as DH. The final message, from Jonathan. "Emily's processed everything through proper channels. Paper trail is clean. Proceed with the vote." The vote, October 15th. The day Senator Hutchinson's committee had approved legislation worth hundreds of millions to companies like Westvale. The day our stock had jumped 12%. I pulled up my banking app, checking my severance deposit, 2 weeks' pay to buy my silence. They thought an NDA could contain this, that I was just another discarded employee who'd fade into LinkedIn obscurity. But NDAs didn't cover criminal activity. Whistleblower protections existed for exactly this reason. My personal email contained more fragments, late-night messages I'd sent myself when the company server was acting up, attachments I'd forwarded to review at home. One contained a spreadsheet Jonathan had asked me to clean up, rows of transactions that, I now realized, mapped perfectly onto campaign contribution limits, split across dozens of shell entities to obscure the source. The conspiracy was elegant in its simplicity. Westvale needed legislation. Senator Hutchinson needed funding. Jonathan had built a pipeline between them, hidden in plain sight among legitimate business expenses. And I'd been the perfect unwitting accomplice, trusted enough to handle the papers, naive enough not to ask questions, disposable enough to eliminate when the deal was done. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully, jeans, boots, a sweater that didn't scream, unemployed. Tonight, I'd meet Rachel Monroe. But first, I needed insurance. I drove to a FedEx office in Aurora, far from my usual haunts. 3 USB drives, each containing the full archive, went into separate packages. One to my sister in Portland, with instructions not to open unless something happened to me. One to a safety deposit box I'd opened that morning at a bank where I had no other accounts. The third I'd keep with me. As I sealed the packages, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're having a tough week. Some situations are best left alone. Focus on moving forward. No signature, but the threat was clear. They were watching. I texted back, moving forward is exactly what I'm doing. At home, I pulled out the separation agreement Melissa had given me. Page after page of legal language designed to bury me. But there, in Section 7, subsection C, was my favorite clause. This agreement does not prevent the reporting of suspected criminal activity to appropriate authorities. Jonathan had been so eager to get rid of me, he'd used a standard template, another mistake in a growing list. I spent the afternoon preparing for Rachel, organizing documents into a coherent narrative. Each piece alone meant nothing. Together, they painted a picture of corruption that reached from Denver to Washington. The employee they'd discarded on Monday had become something far more dangerous by Friday, a witness with proof and nothing left to lose. The sun was setting when I finally stopped, surveying my work. 5 years at Westvale had taught me how to craft a narrative, how to control a story. Now I'd use those same skills to tell the last story that company would ever want public. They'd fired Emily Carter, the communications manager. But they'd created something else, someone with the keys to their kingdom and every reason to use them. Murphy's Bar squatted on Colfax like a relic from Denver's grittier past. Neon beer signs flickering against windows, clouded with decades of smoke that no amount of cleaning could erase. I arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a booth in the back corner where I could watch the door. The USB drive in my pocket felt heavier than physics should allow. A woman entered at exactly 8 o'clock, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Rachel Monroe looked nothing like the investigative journalists in movies, no trench coat or fedora, just dark jeans, ankle boots, and a leather jacket worn soft with age. Her eyes found mine, and she navigated through the sparse Friday crowd with purposeful steps. Emily? She slid into the opposite bench without waiting for confirmation. Thanks for meeting me. Up close, I could see the exhaustion around her eyes, the kind that came from chasing stories that didn't want to be caught. You said you've been investigating Westvale for 6 months. 8, actually. She pulled out a phone, placing it between us. Mind if I record? Yes, I mind. A smile tugged at her lips. Smart. Off the record then, until you decide otherwise. She signaled the bartender, ordering whiskey neat. Marcus didn't tell me much, just that you'd been let go and might have insights into Jonathan Miles's operations. What got you interested in Westvale? A pattern. Rachel leaned forward, voice dropping beneath the bar's ambient noise. 3 telecommunications companies, all receiving favorable legislation, all showing similar payment structures to consulting firms that barely exist. Westvale's just the biggest fish. I sipped my beer, weighing my options. What if I told you it goes deeper than suspicious payments? I'd ask if you had proof. Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and showed her a photograph of one of the invoices. Her poker face cracked slightly, eyes widening. Jesus, is that? One of many. But I need guarantees before I share anything. What kind of guarantees? Source protection. My name stays out of it until charges are filed, and I want to know everything you have on Hutchinson. Rachel studied me for a long moment. You're not just a disgruntled employee, are you? You were inside this. I was a tool they used. Now I'm choosing to be something else. She pulled out a slim laptop, angling the screen away from the bar's other patrons. Senator David Hutchinson, 3-term incumbent, Telecommunications Committee chair for 2 years. Campaign funding spiked last year, mostly from PACs with nebulous funding sources. She clicked through documents. I've traced shell companies from 3 telecom firms all feeding into the same PACs that support him, but I couldn't prove the connection. Until now. The connection runs through Jonathan Miles, I said. He coordinated payments, timed to coincide with key votes. I processed the paperwork. Rachel's fingers flew across her keyboard, taking notes. How much are we talking about? Over 7 million that I can document. Possibly more I didn't see. Holy shit. She paused. Sorry. It's just, I knew it was big. But this is systemic corruption. A man entered the bar, scanning the room before taking a seat where he could watch our booth. Paranoia prickled along my spine. We should move, Rachel said quietly, confirming my instinct. My car's out back. We left separately, reconvening in her beat-up Honda Civic parked behind the bar. The interior smelled of coffee and determination. Rachel pulled out a different phone, this one clearly a burner. I need to see everything, she said. Documents, emails, anything that establishes the pattern. I handed her the USB drive. This is a copy. I have backups. She plugged it into a tablet, eyes widening as she scrolled through the files. Emily, this is Pulitzer material. This could bring down Hutchinson, maybe take Westvale's entire C-suite with him. That's the idea. But you know what happens when you pull this trigger, right? They'll come after you. Legal teams, private investigators, character assassination. I thought about Monday, about the humiliation of carrying that box past colleagues who couldn't meet my eyes, about Jonathan's casual dismissal of 5 years of loyalty. They already came after me. They just didn't finish the job. Rachel studied the documents for another hour, occasionally asking for clarification. Finally, she looked up. I can have a story ready by Thursday, but I need you on record, at least partially. Sources familiar with the matter only goes so far. Once it publishes, I'll go on record, not before. Fair. She started the car. Where can I drop you? Actually, I said, an idea forming. How do you feel about having a research assistant for the next few days? Someone who knows Westvale's systems inside and out? Rachel grinned, the exhaustion in her eyes replaced by hunger. I feel like Jonathan Miles just made the worst mistake of his career. As we drove through Denver's dark streets, I felt the shift from victim to predator complete. Monday. They'd taken everything from me. By next Friday, I'd return the favor with interest. Tuesday, Rachel's apartment became our command center. She lived above a Vietnamese restaurant in Aurora, and the smell of pho permeated everything. We'd been at it for 16 hours straight, building timelines, cross-referencing payments, mapping the conspiracy's architecture. I need more on the December transactions, Rachel said, highlighting another row in the spreadsheet. These amounts don't match the others. My eyes burned from screen glare. December was when the merger talks leaked. Jonathan was panicking, authorizing payments faster than I could process them. To keep Hutchinson quiet, to keep him on board, the merger needed regulatory approval. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Enjoy your new friend. Hope she's worth it. Rachel saw my face. They're watching? Let them. But my hands shook as I deleted the message. That afternoon, I'd noticed the same sedan parked outside 3 different locations. They wanted me scared. It was working, but not how they intended. Fear was crystallizing into rage. Wednesday, I couldn't go home. The sedan had been joined by a second car, taking shifts. Rachel set me up on her couch, and I dozed fitfully, dreaming of Jonathan's face when the story broke. At 3 a.m., I woke to Rachel shaking my shoulder. Emily, look at this. She'd found something in the metadata, a PDF that had been edited by someone named Thompson 17 times before reaching its final form. Each edit had left traces, ghost text, that revealed the document's evolution. They were negotiating the bribe amount, Rachel breathed. Look, it started at 5 million, went up to 12, settled at 7. That's written proof of intent, I said. They can't claim ignorance with this. We worked until dawn, fueled by convenience store coffee and righteous fury. I showed Rachel how to navigate Westvale's public filings, where to find the discrepancies between reported consultant expenses and actual payments. Every hour brought new revelations, each more damning than the last. Thursday. The story was almost ready. Rachel had written 12,000 words, whittling them down to 4,000 of surgical precision. But she needed one more thing. I have to verify the Hutchinson angle independently, she said. My editor won't run it otherwise. How? I've got a source in Hutchinson's office, former staffer with a grudge. She grabbed her keys. I'll be back in 3 hours. Don't answer the door. Alone. I felt exposed. The apartment's thin walls seemed permeable. Every footstep in the hallway made me freeze. I distracted myself by creating a visual timeline on Rachel's wall, using yarn and printed documents like a conspiracy theorist. But this conspiracy was real. My personal phone rang. Marcus. Emily, where are you? Jonathan's been asking about you, says you took proprietary documents. Did he say what kind of documents? No, but he's got legal involved. And I overheard him mention the FBI. I almost laughed. The FBI, that's rich. This isn't funny. Whatever you're doing is exactly what needs to be done. Thanks for the warning. Marcus. Stay clear of this. Rachel returned, looking triumphant. Confirmed, Hutchinson's former chief of staff kept records. Meetings with Jonathan that were never on the official calendar, all coinciding with your payment dates. So we're really doing this. Tomorrow morning. The story goes live at 6 a.m. Eastern. Maximum exposure catches them before they can respond. That night, we ordered Vietnamese from downstairs and sat surrounded by evidence of corporate malfeasance, eating spring rolls while finalizing the details that would destroy the people who'd destroyed me. I couldn't sleep, alternating between satisfaction and terror. Friday, 4 a.m., Rachel's editor called. The legal team had cleared the story. It would run in 2 hours. You can still back out, Rachel said. Once this publishes, there's no going back. I thought about Monday, about the walk to HR, about Jonathan's calculated indifference, about 5 years of weekends sacrificed for a company that discarded me like expired inventory. Send it. Friday, 6 a.m., the story went live. Senator telecom giant in $7 million bribery scheme screamed across the news site's homepage. Rachel's phone exploded with calls. Mine stayed silent, but I could feel the storm building. Friday, 9 a.m., Westvale's stock price plummeted 12% at market open. CNN picked up the story, then Fox, then everyone. My phone finally rang. Melissa from HR. Emily, we need to discuss your illegal possession of company documents. I hung up and blocked the number. Friday, noon. Rachel and I sat in a diner, watching the news on an ancient TV above the counter. Jonathan's face appeared, harried and defensive, denying everything. Senator Hutchinson's office had released a statement about baseless allegations and political witch hunts. They're scared, Rachel said. Good. Friday, 3 p.m. The call came from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me swipe. Ms. Carter, this is Special Agent Diana Foster with the FBI. We'd like to speak with you about your former employer. The smile that spread across my face felt feral. I'd be happy to cooperate. Agent Foster, can you come to the federal building within the hour? I'll be there. I looked at Rachel. Want to know how this ends? Are you kidding? This is the story of the year. As we gathered our things, my phone buzzed with a news alert. FBI raids Westvale Dynamics headquarters. The wheel of justice hadn't just turned. I'd grabbed it with both hands and spun it myself. Friday, 4 p.m. The federal building's lobby hummed with controlled chaos. Rachel and I pushed through a crowd of reporters who'd somehow already gotten wind of my arrival. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Ms. Carter? Did you know about the corruption when you worked there? Emily, are you the whistleblower? Will you testify against Jonathan Miles? I kept my head down, letting security guards create a path to the elevators. Rachel squeezed my hand once before stepping back. She couldn't follow where I was going. Agent Foster met me on the 7th floor. She was younger than her voice had suggested, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a handshake that meant business. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. We've been building a case against Westvale for months, but your documentation accelerated everything. She led me to a conference room where 3 other agents waited with laptops and recording equipment. On the wall, a screen displayed live footage from CNN, aerial shots of FBI agents carrying boxes from Westvale's headquarters. My former workplace looked like a crime scene, because it was. We need you to walk us through every document, Foster said. But first, I should tell you that Jonathan Miles was taken into custody an hour ago. The words hit me physically. I sank into a chair, 5 days of adrenaline suddenly draining away. Arrested? Along with CFO Brian Hendricks and 2 board members, Senator Hutchinson is being questioned as we speak. Friday, 5:30 p.m. for 90 minutes. I detailed everything. Every invoice, every suspicious email, every coded conversation I'd overheard. The agents took notes with mechanical precision, occasionally exchanging glances when I revealed particularly damning details. The December 15th payment, one agent said, pulling up a document. You processed this? Jonathan said it was for crisis management consulting, but look at the date. Nothing was happening that day. No crisis, no media situation. The only thing on the calendar was Hutchinson's committee vote on spectrum allocation. Foster nodded. That vote was worth approximately $300 million to Westvale over 5 years. $7 million in bribes for $300 million in profit, I said. Good return on investment. Not anymore. Friday, 6 p.m. The conference room TV was tuned to CNBC. Westvale's stock had dropped 37%. Trading had been halted twice. The anchor looked gleeful as she reported that shareholders were already organizing lawsuits. My phone, silent for hours, suddenly erupted. Texts from former colleagues flooded in. Holy shit, Emily. You're a hero. I knew something was wrong. Jonathan's in handcuffs on TV. One text stood out from Sarah in accounting. The office is chaos. Everyone's celebrating. You did what we all wanted to, but were too scared to do. Friday, 7 p.m. Foster walked me out through a different exit to avoid the media circus. We'll need you to testify when this goes to trial. I'll be there. You should know, Westvale's board is meeting tonight. Word is they're going to clean house. Everyone connected to this is gone. As we reached the exit, she handed me a card. You did the right thing, Ms. Carter. That took courage. It took rage, I corrected. Courage was just a side effect. Friday, 8 p.m. Rachel was waiting in her car outside. Murphy's? She asked. Murphy's. The bar was packed, Friday night crowd in full swing. We found 2 seats at the bar. And I ordered a beer with hands that finally weren't shaking. The TV above the bar played local news on mute, but I could read the closed captions. Denver telecom giant falls in corruption scandal. Then the footage I'd been waiting for, Jonathan Miles being led from the federal building in handcuffs, trying to shield his face from cameras. His expensive suit looked cheap under the harsh lights. His perfectly styled hair was mussed. He looked small. Turn it up, someone shouted, and the bartender grabbed the remote. Jonathan's voice filled the bar. These allegations are completely false. I look forward to clearing my name, and... A reporter cut him off. Mr. Miles, did you authorize $7 million in bribes to Senator Hutchinson? I have no further comment. The footage showed him being pushed into a black SUV, disappearing behind tinted windows. The bar erupted in commentary. Denver loved a fallen executive story. That your old boss? The bartender asked, setting down another beer I hadn't ordered. This one's on the house for whoever took that bastard down. I raised the glass silently, watching the news replay Jonathan's perp walk. Beside me, Rachel was already typing on her phone, working on the follow-up story that would run in tomorrow's edition. Friday, 9 p.m. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Emily? The voice was broken, desperate. It's Jonathan. My breath caught. How are you? One phone call. Listen, I know what you did, but you don't understand the full picture. These people, they don't just go to prison, they have reach. You need to be careful. The line went dead. Rachel looked at me. Who was that? Nobody important. Not anymore. I turned back to the TV, where they were now showing footage of FBI agents cataloging evidence from Westvale's offices. My evidence. 5 years of my life had led to this moment, sitting in a dive bar, watching the empire that had discarded me crumble on live television. The bartender returned. Another round? Keep them coming, I said, lifting my glass to the screen where Jonathan's arrest photo had just appeared. We're celebrating the end of an era. Friday, 10 p.m. The bar had filled with Westvale employees, refugees from the disaster seeking comfort in alcohol and shared shock. I recognized faces from accounting, marketing. People who'd averted their eyes on Monday as I carried my box of belongings past their desks. Now they nodded at me with something between awe and fear. That's her, I heard someone whisper. That's Emily Carter. A young developer I'd barely spoken to before approached hesitantly. Emily, I just wanted to say, we all knew something was wrong. The way they let you go, it didn't make sense. And now? He gestured at the TV where aerial footage showed the FBI still processing evidence. You're a hero. I'm not a hero, I said, the beer making me more honest than wise. I'm just someone who got fired and decided to return the favor. More people approached, forming a semicircle of former colleagues eager to share their own suspicions, their own moments of doubt about Westvale's leadership. Everyone had a story about Jonathan's arrogance, about mysterious meetings, about decisions that never quite added up. Hindsight was making profits of them all. Sarah from accounting pushed through the crowd, throwing her arms around me in a fierce hug. I wanted to call you all week, but they were monitoring our communications. HR sent a memo Wednesday warning us not to contact you. They were scared, I said. They should have been. Friday, 11 p.m. The news kept coming. Senator Hutchinson had been formally charged with accepting bribes, conspiracy, and wire fraud. 3 more Westvale executives had been arrested at their homes. The company's board had called an emergency meeting for midnight, presumably to perform emergency surgery on a corpse. My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number, but this time it was Agent Foster. Thought you should know, Miles is trying to make a deal, offering full cooperation for reduced charges. Your documentation makes his leverage worthless. He's looking at 15-20 years. 15 to 20 years. Jonathan would be in his 70s when he got out. If he got out. The man who'd casually destroyed my career over a Monday morning coffee would spend decades in federal prison. The math felt right. Rachel returned from interviewing employees outside, her cheeks flushed with excitement and cold. This is incredible. Everyone's talking. Apparently, the FBI seized everything, computers, phones, even personal devices. The whole C-suite is lawyering up. Good, I said, and meant it. Saturday, 12:30 I. The bar had become awake for Westvale dynamics. Someone had started a pool on how long before bankruptcy. With most bets clustering around 6 months, the stock price, displayed on someone's phone, had dropped 43% in after-hours trading. By Monday's open, analysts predicted it would have. A notification popped up on Rachel's phone. Oh my God, Emily, look. She showed me a video just posted by a local news station. The Westvale building's executive floor, usually blazing with light even at midnight, was dark except for a single conference room where shadows moved behind frosted glass. The board deciding who else to sacrifice. They're probably discussing your replacement's replacement, someone joked darkly. Marcus appeared at my elbow, drunk and emotional. Emily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't do more. When they fired you, I should have quit in solidarity. I should have. You have a mortgage, I said. 2 kids. You did what you had to do. You had bills too, but you fought back. I fought back because I had nothing left to lose. There's a difference. Saturday, 1 a.m. The crowd had thinned, leaving only the hardcore drinkers and those too shocked to go home. I sat at the bar, watching the news cycle repeat the same footage, the same revelations, the same corporate headshots of men in suits who'd thought themselves untouchable. The bartender, who'd been feeding me free drinks all night, leaned across the bar. You know, my brother worked for Westvale 5 years ago. They laid off his entire department right before Christmas. No warning, no real severance. Seeing those bastards in handcuffs. He poured another shot. This is for cosmic justice. We toasted to cosmic justice, to karma, to the wheels that ground slowly but exceedingly fine. Saturday, 2 a.m. Rachel drove me back to her apartment, both of us exhausted but too wired to sleep. We sat on her couch, watching the news on mute, the flickering images of corporate collapse playing like a silent movie. What are you going to do now? She asked. I hadn't thought beyond this moment, beyond the takedown. For 5 days, revenge had been my North Star. Now, with Jonathan in custody and Westvale in ruins, I felt strangely empty. I don't know, I admitted. For the first time in 5 years, I have no idea what comes next. That's not true, Rachel said. Monday you were a victim. Tonight, you're the woman who brought down a corrupt corporation and a senator. You can do anything you want now. On the TV, they showed the footage again, Jonathan in handcuffs, head bowed, being led away. The image froze on his face, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Pure, existential fear. The same fear I'd felt on Monday, magnified 1,000-fold. You know what? I said, finally feeling something other than anger for the first time all week. I think I'm going to sleep really well tonight. Saturday, 3 a.m., I stood at Rachel's window, watching Denver sleep beneath a canopy of stars. The city lights twinkled indifferently, unaware that one of its corporate giants had fallen. In the reflection, I saw myself, not the polished professional who'd walked into Westvale every morning for 5 years, not the humiliated woman who'd carried a cardboard box out on Monday, but someone entirely new. Someone who'd learned that justice wasn't given, it was taken. The apartment was quiet except for Rachel's soft snoring from the bedroom. She'd offered me her couch for as long as I needed it, but I knew I wouldn't stay long. This chapter was closing, and I could feel another one waiting to begin. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. No more threatening texts, no more warnings. They'd tried to scare me into submission, not realizing they'd already taken everything I had to lose. That had been their fatal miscalculation. You can't threaten someone who's already at rock bottom. You can only give them a reason to climb out swinging. Saturday, dawn. I must have dozed off, because I woke to pale sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of Rachel making coffee in the kitchen. The news was still playing on her laptop, but the story had evolved. Westvale's board had fired everyone in senior management. Trading would remain suspended until Monday. The FBI investigation had expanded to include 3 other telecommunications companies. Morning, Dragon Slayer, Rachel said, handing me a mug. How does it feel to be unemployed and infamous? Better than being employed and invisible, I replied, and meant it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Jonathan Miles was sitting in a federal holding cell, probably still in his expensive suit, learning what it felt like to have his freedom revoked without warning. The poetry of it wasn't lost on me. Saturday, noon. I finally went home. The sedan that had been watching my apartment was gone, replaced by an entirely different kind of attention. Reporters had figured out where I lived, and a small cluster waited outside my building. I pushed through them without comment, ignoring their questions about my next moves. about how it felt to be a whistleblower, about whether I'd write a book. Inside my apartment, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. The evidence wall still mapped across my living room, empty coffee cups clustered on every surface, the cardboard box from Monday still sitting on my kitchen counter. I picked up the framed photo from the box, the one of my family at Christmas 3 years ago. We all looked so happy, so unaware of what was coming. I set it on the mantel and began taking down the evidence wall. That story was over now. Told. Done. Saturday, evening Agent Foster called with updates. Jonathan's attempt at a plea deal had failed. The evidence was too overwhelming, the public attention too intense. He'd be held without bail until trial. Senator Hutchinson had resigned, effective immediately. 17 more arrests were expected by Monday. "You changed everything," Foster said. "We'd been building this case for 2 years, but without your documentation, we might never have connected all the pieces." After she hung up, I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of my old life. 5 years of corporate climbing had led to 5 days of controlled demolition. The math was absurd, but the equation balanced. Saturday, night. I met Rachel at Murphy's one last time. The bar was quieter, the story already becoming yesterday's news for everyone except those of us who'd lived it. We sat in the same booth where we'd first met a week ago, 2 strangers united by a common enemy. "I owe you everything," I said. "You owe me nothing," she replied. "You gave me the story of my career. If anything, we're even..." The TV above the bar was showing a documentary about corporate corruption, as if the universe had developed a sense of irony. I raised my beer to the screen, to Jonathan's mugshot that had become the face of corporate greed, to the executive floor that would never be the same. "What's next for Emily Carter?" Rachel asked. I thought about the question seriously for the first time. The fury that had driven me all week had burned itself out, leaving something cleaner in its wake. Not forgiveness. I'd never forgive them for what they'd done. But clarity. Purpose. "I think I'm going to help other people tell their stories," I said. "There are more Westvales out there, more Jonathans, more people who think they can destroy lives without consequence." "A corruption consultant," Rachel laughed. "I like it." Sunday morning. I woke in my own bed for the first time in days. No angry texts, no surveillance cars, no corporate anxiety. Just silence and sunlight and the knowledge that somewhere across the city, the people who tried to erase me were learning what real erasure felt like. I made coffee and stood at my window, looking out at Denver's skyline. The Westvale building still stood, but it was just architecture now, emptied of its power. By Monday, a new narrative would begin. One about accountability, about consequences, about how a single fired employee brought down an empire because they forgot that the person who handles your secrets might someday have reason to share them. The woman reflected in the window smiled. Not the bitter smile of revenge completed, but something more sustainable. The smile of someone who'd been broken on Monday and rebuilt herself by Friday into something harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous to those who confused power with immunity. Sometimes, the person fired on Monday really does write the obituary for an empire by Friday. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to watch it all burn from the best seat in the house, a bar stool at Murphy's, cold beer in hand, surrounded by the people who helped you light the match. Justice doesn't always come in robes and gavels. Sometimes it comes in a cardboard box and a pink slip, transforming humiliation into ammunition. They'd fired Emily Carter, communications manager. They'd created Emily Carter, corporate nightmare. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice served cold. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of turning termination into triumph resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace justice. Have you ever witnessed karma catching up with corporate wrongdoing? Let me know in the comments. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth.